16,000 US Marines could be going to Australia permanently. In my mind, there are only two things that keep China's president, Xi Jinping, up at night: the US Marine Corps and Australia. So what happens when you put those two together? Let's find out. Crikey! Hello friends, Wes O'Donnell, Army and Air Force veteran, and I just can't seem to break away from Australian military news. Have I been bitten by the Australian bug? Probably not, because I'd be dead by now. Everything can kill you down there. So settle in. I hope you've had your brekkie and gone to the dunny because the Marines are coming to Darwin. But first, hit that subscribe button for me. I'll wait. Good, thank you so much. China's rapid military buildup has been alarming Western observers as far back, at least, as the Obama administration. The most recent examples of China's aggressive actions can be found in the 2023 China Military Power Report that the Department of Defense delivered to Congress last year. In it, the DoD identified China as the department's top pacing challenge. By 2049, marking the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party's rise to power, China's leadership aims to pull off what they call the Great Rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. Rejuvenation. Sounds so peaceful. Think of it as a national makeover, but instead of Botox, it means ballistic missiles, military drills, and nuclear expansion. As part of this rejuvenation, China has amped up military coercion in recent years. Case in point, a sharp rise in unsafe intercepts of U.S. aircraft and vessels in international airspace and waterways across the Indo-Pacific between fall of 2021 and fall of 2023. The U.S. counted over 180 risky maneuvers by China's People's Liberation Army. Throw in incidents involving allies and partners, and that number jumps north of 300. Turns out, flying through international airspace near China is about as safe as jaywalking across the Autobahn. And then there's Taiwan. China's pressure campaign against the self-governing island has intensified, including ballistic missile overflights, swarms of Chinese jets intruding into Taiwan's air defense identification zone, and large-scale simulated blockade exercises. The PLA even staged a mock firepower strike shortly after a U.S. congressional delegation had the audacity to drop by Taipei. Subtle diplomacy? Not exactly. Meanwhile, Xi Jinping's bromance with Vladimir Putin has only grown stronger. Xi's vision of China's ascent as a global power seems tethered to its alliance with Russia, two countries united by a shared skepticism of freedom and apparently a fondness for grand authoritarian ceremonies. As of May of 2023, China had over 500 operational nuclear warheads, surpassing earlier projections, and it's not just the nukes. They're cooking up some new intercontinental ballistic missiles, some of which may not even need a nuclear warhead to pose a threat. If developed and deployed, these ICBMs could carry out conventional strikes against targets in the continental US, Hawaii, and Alaska, just in case you thought Alaska was safely tucked away from all the drama. On the ground, the PLA is upgrading equipment and focusing on joint training, blending multiple branches into a more cohesive force. But old habits die hard. The PLA is still a conscript army, with 2 waves of fresh recruits per year. Word is they're also working on integrating long-range fires into their doctrine, presumably for those moments when subtle pressure needs a little extra firepower. Personally, I'm a little skeptical of China's actual ground combat capability. I've written in the past about this, but a conscript army with no combat experience in recent history is likely to break once the bullets start flying. Meanwhile, Australia played a very active role in Iraq and Afghanistan. For instance, the ADF participated in the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and from 2006 until 2013, a battalion-sized Australian Army task force operated in Afghanistan. These are just 2 examples. Australia had multiple other combat deployments to the region throughout the global war on terror. Still, China's endgame is clear: to reshape the world order in a way that favors its vision of power and influence. Whether this rejuvenation plan succeeds or not, one thing's for sure, China's approach is less spa day and more Cold War flashbacks with a 21st century twist. Having said all of that, the US and its allies are not standing idly by. Indeed, there is one nation to China's south that may turn out to be Xi's biggest nightmare. Yep, Australia. The Australian Defence Force is small but mighty. What I mean to say is the ADF is technologically sophisticated but relatively small for its landmass, with only 60,000 active duty personnel and about 40,000 reserves. In September 2021, Australia entered into the AUKUS trilateral security partnership with the United Kingdom and the US. As part of this partnership, Australia will receive nuclear attack submarines to significantly improve the Royal Australian Navy's capabilities. The three AUKUS countries also agreed to collaborate on a range of military technologies. And of course, Australia is a member of the Five Eyes Intelligence Alliance, comprising Australia, Canada, New Zealand, the United Kingdom, and the US. In 2022, the US and Australian governments funded major construction in the northern port of Darwin at Larrakia Defense Precinct. Wait, does that say nude beach? Good for you, Australia. America is so prude. I say, get your freak on. They also funded major construction at Royal Australian Air Force bases Darwin and Tyndall for facilities that will be used by the US Air Force, the US Navy, and the US Marine Corps. This includes a $317 million upgrade of facilities and a new 820-foot-long wharf and fuel farm. So what's this about US Marines in Darwin? Well, Darwin has been home to 100 US Marines deployed there the past 6 months as part of a 2,200-strong rotational force that has been training in the Northern Territory during the Southern Hemisphere's cooler months since 2012. The bulk of the force is at Robertson Barracks, an Australian Army post about 12 miles to the east. The Marines share Larrakia with 600 Australian sailors assigned to Naval Base HMAS Coonawarra. But now, the land down under might soon be hosting thousands more US Marines, with numbers potentially climbing to 16,000, according to a recent proposal from an Australian think tank. It's not quite a full invasion, more like an extended stay with some very well-armed guests. Australia's Institute of Public Affairs dropped the report this week, arguing that housing all those Marines could be the country's cheapest boost to deterring regional adversaries like China. Basically, instead of splurging on expensive new defense programs, just let the Marines crash on your couch. I mean, personally, I wouldn't invite the Marines into my house or let them anywhere near my daughters, but hey, a 16,000 person Marine Expeditionary Brigade camping out in Darwin would definitely give China pause. The report goes on. The Australian government should open discussions with the US to host a rotational presence of a Marine Expeditionary Brigade potentially around 16,000 personnel, bringing with it significantly increased firepower and aviation assets, the report says. Translation: more Marines, more guns, and plenty of oorah. From this prime spot, Marines enjoy direct access to Indonesia and a quick 1,400-mile hop to the southern Philippines, practically the Airbnb of military deployments. The report suggests that with a little hustle, the Marine expansion could begin as soon as next year and be fully operational by 2028. In July, the Marines already flexed some muscle in Australia during Exercise Pitch Black and Exercise Predator's Run. Question for a future video: why do Marine exercises sound like straight-to-DVD action movies? Adding Marines in Australia would complement existing US forces in the region, including nearly 18,000 Marines on Okinawa and an expanding presence in Guam. As part of the core broader Pacific strategy, they've established Marine Littoral Regiments, MLRs, like the 3rd MLR in Hawaii, with others on the way in Okinawa and Guam. These units come armed to the teeth with advanced sensing, air defense, and targeting tech, because nothing says welcome to the neighborhood like mobile radar systems and anti-ship missiles. Speaking of radar, the Marines recently conducted a quick reaction landing on Japan's Yonaguni Island, just 70 miles from Taiwan, with help from their Japanese counterparts. That's about as subtle as tossing a brick through China's diplomatic window. Meanwhile, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin welcomed Australia's foreign affairs and defense ministers, along with the Deputy Prime Minister, to Annapolis, Maryland in August. After some polite nods to economic and climate change partnerships, the joint statement also contained a subtle nudge for Beijing. While pledging to maintain open lines of communication with China, the statement reinforced the U.S. commitment to maintain the steady and long-term presence of Australian and U.S. aircraft and vessels in the Indo-Pacific. Now, no actual specifics on troop numbers other than that 16K number were included in the statement, but one thing is clear. Australia's beaches could soon see a lot more marine buzz cuts. Whether they'll bring their surfboards for Dripstone Beach remains to be seen. Just watch out for the box jellyfish and the saltwater crocs, mates. That's it for today. Advance Australia. And as always, glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. Slava Ukraini.